General Thompson barely glanced at the disheveled woman at the base gate, just another person seeking help. But when she looked up with piercing blue eyes and said, "Hello, David. Remember Operation Thunder Ridge?" His blood ran cold. Captain Sophia Falcon Rodriguez, the pilot who had saved his life 15 years ago, was standing before him as a homeless stranger. The morning rain had turned the entrance to Fort Harrison into a muddy mess, and General David Thompson was running late for his staff meeting when he noticed the commotion at the main gate. Two security guards were speaking with what appeared to be a homeless woman, their voices carrying the patient but firm tone reserved for people who needed to be redirected to civilian social services. General Thompson had seen this scenario countless times during his 30-year military career. Homeless veterans, desperate families, confused civilians, they all eventually found their way to military installations, seeking help, shelter, or simply someone who would listen to their problems. The guards handled these situations with professionalism and compassion, but they also maintained security protocols that kept unauthorized personnel away from sensitive military facilities. "Ma'am, I understand you're looking for assistance, but this is a restricted military installation," Sergeant Williams was explaining to the woman. "There are civilian agencies in town that can help you with housing and social services." The woman stood with her back to General Thompson, but even from a distance, something about her posture struck him as unusual. Despite her obviously difficult circumstances, torn clothing, unkempt hair, and the general appearance of someone who had been living on the streets, she carried herself with a bearing that suggested military training. Her stance was straight, her head held high, and her hands remained visible and still rather than fidgeting with nervousness. General Thompson had developed an eye for spotting former military personnel over the years. There were subtle indicators that distinguished veterans from civilians: the way they stood, how they responded to authority, their instinctive awareness of their surroundings. This woman displayed several of these characteristics despite her disheveled appearance. "Sergeant Williams, what's the situation here?" General Thompson asked as he approached the gate. "Sir, this woman is asking for access to the base. She doesn't have identification or any apparent connection to our personnel. We're trying to direct her to appropriate civilian resources." General Thompson was about to acknowledge the guard's professional handling of the situation when the woman turned around to face him. The moment their eyes met, his world shifted in a way that defied rational explanation. Those were the same piercing blue eyes that had looked back at him through a helicopter windscreen during the worst moment of his military career 15 years ago. The same steady, fearless gaze that had remained calm while flying through enemy fire to extract his trapped unit from an impossible situation. The same eyes that belonged to the pilot who had saved his life and the lives of 14 other soldiers during a mission that had gone catastrophically wrong. "Hello, David. Remember Operation Thunder Ridge?" The voice hit him like a physical blow. It was older, rougher, marked by years of hardship, but unmistakably familiar. General Thompson felt his knees weaken as memories flooded back with devastating clarity. Captain Sophia Falcon Rodriguez had been the most gifted pilot he'd ever served with, a woman whose flying skills bordered on supernatural and whose courage under fire had become legendary among the units she supported. She had been his friend, his fellow officer, and ultimately his savior during a mission that should have killed everyone involved. But the woman standing before him bore only a passing resemblance to the confident, immaculate officer he remembered. Sophia's once pristine uniform had been replaced by torn jeans and a stained jacket. Her hair, which she had always worn in a regulation military style, now hung loose and unkempt. Most shocking of all, the pride and confidence that had once defined her military bearing seemed to have been replaced by something that looked disturbingly like resignation. "Sophia." General Thompson's voice came out as barely a whisper. "My God, what happened to you?" The security guards exchanged glances, recognizing that their general knew this woman, but uncertain about how to proceed. The situation had clearly moved beyond routine homeless assistance and into territory that required different protocols. "Sergeant Williams, I'll handle this from here," General Thompson said, his voice regaining some of its usual authority despite his emotional state. "Please ensure we have privacy." Yes, sir. Should I contact anyone about this situation? Not yet. Give me some time to understand what's happening here. General Thompson led Sophia away from the gate to a small administrative building where they could speak privately. The walk gave him time to process what he was seeing and try to reconcile the Sophia Rodriguez he remembered with the woman walking beside him. 15 years ago, Captain Sophia Rodriguez had been one of the most respected helicopter pilots in the Army. Her call sign, Falcon, had been earned through a combination of her ability to navigate treacherous terrain at high speed and her talent for bringing damaged aircraft home safely. She had flown rescue missions that other pilots wouldn't attempt, inserted special operations teams into hostile territory that conventional wisdom said was inaccessible, and extracted wounded soldiers from combat zones where survival seemed impossible. More personally, she had been General Thompson's closest friend during his deployment as a young colonel. They had served together in the same unit, shared the same risks, and developed the kind of professional and personal bond that forms between soldiers who trust each other with their lives on a regular basis. The mission that had cemented their relationship and ultimately changed both their lives had occurred during the final weeks of their deployment. Colonel Thompson's reconnaissance unit had been inserted behind enemy lines to gather intelligence on weapons caches and supply routes. The mission had been routine until everything went wrong simultaneously. Enemy forces had detected their presence, surrounded their position, and cut off all escape routes. The unit had been pinned down in a defensive position with limited ammunition, no heavy weapons, and no apparent way to reach extraction zones. Conventional rescue operations would have been suicide missions that accomplished nothing except adding to the casualty count. Captain Sophia Rodriguez had volunteered for a rescue mission that violated every safety protocol and tactical doctrine in the military handbook. Flying a single helicopter into heavily defended enemy territory without air support or covering fire to extract personnel from a landing zone that was under active enemy attack. "This is Falcon requesting clearance for emergency extraction," Sophia had radioed to command. "I'm going in for Thompson's unit." "Negative, Falcon. The LZ is too hot. Wait for air support to suppress enemy positions." "Sir, they don't have time to wait for air support. I'm going in now." Sophia had flown her UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter through a gauntlet of enemy fire that should have shot her down within the first 30 seconds. Anti-aircraft guns, rocket-propelled grenades, and small arms fire had filled the air around her aircraft, but she had somehow managed to navigate through the chaos with the kind of precision flying that defied both physics and logic. The landing zone had been a small clearing surrounded by enemy positions, with incoming fire from 3 directions and obstacles that made a safe landing nearly impossible. Sophia had brought her helicopter down in a controlled crash that damaged the aircraft, but preserved its ability to take off with passengers. "Get on board now!" she had shouted over the rotor noise and gunfire. "We've got maybe 30 seconds before they adjust their fire and hit us." Colonel Thompson and his 13 surviving soldiers had scrambled aboard the damaged helicopter, while Sophia kept the rotors turning and prepared for what everyone understood would be an extremely dangerous takeoff under fire. The helicopter had lifted off with enemy rounds, striking the fuselage and critical systems failing throughout the aircraft. Sophia had flown the damaged Black Hawk through the same enemy fire that had nearly destroyed it during landing, using every bit of her skill and experience to keep the aircraft airborne long enough to reach friendly territory. They had made it to the extraction point with the helicopter's engines failing, hydraulic systems damaged, and Sophia fighting to maintain control of an aircraft that was essentially flying itself apart. The landing had been controlled but violent, resulting in injuries to several passengers, but no fatalities. Sophia had saved 14 lives that day, including Thompson's. The mission had earned her a Distinguished Flying Cross and recognition as one of the most skilled combat pilots of her generation. It should have been the foundation for a distinguished military career that would have taken her to the highest levels of military aviation. Instead, it had marked the beginning of the end of her service. "Sophia, I need to understand what happened to you. The last time I saw you, you were being promoted to major and assigned to a prestigious flight training position. How did you end up like this? Sophia looked around the small office where they were sitting, her eyes taking in the military decorations, unit photographs, and administrative paperwork that marked it as belonging to a successful career officer. The contrast with her own current circumstances was obvious and painful. David, a lot has happened since Operation Thunder Ridge. Some of it was my choice, some of it wasn't. The short version is that my military career didn't survive the transition to peacetime, and my civilian life didn't survive the transition from military service. Sophia, you were one of the most gifted pilots I've ever served with. How does someone with your skills and qualifications end up homeless? It's complicated. After the war, the Army downsized and changed its priorities. Combat experience became less valuable than peacetime qualifications. Flying skills that were essential during wartime became liabilities during budget cuts and personnel reductions. General Thompson understood the broader context Sophia was describing. The military drawdown following the end of major combat operations had forced difficult decisions about personnel retention and career advancement. Many highly qualified combat veterans had found themselves surplus to peacetime requirements, despite their proven abilities and service records. But Sophia's case seemed particularly tragic given her exceptional skills and heroic service record. Combat pilots with her qualifications should have been retained and promoted, not forced out of service. Sophia, what specifically happened? Was there a particular incident or decision that ended your military career? Sophia's expression became more guarded, and she took several moments before responding. There was an investigation after a training accident. A student pilot was killed during a routine exercise that I was supervising. The accident board found that my teaching methods were too aggressive and that I had failed to maintain adequate safety standards. That doesn't sound like the Sophia Rodriguez I knew. You were always extremely safety conscious. The accident wasn't my fault, but it happened on my watch and during a training program I was responsible for. In the post-war military environment, any negative incident became grounds for career termination. They offered me the choice between accepting responsibility for the accident or facing a court-martial that could have resulted in criminal charges. General Thompson began to understand how Sophia's military career had been destroyed by circumstances beyond her control. The combination of peacetime politics, risk-averse leadership, and the need for scapegoats following any training accident had created a situation where even exemplary officers could be forced out of service. So you accepted responsibility to avoid the court-martial? I accepted responsibility because it was the only way to protect the other instructors in my program. If the investigation had continued, several other officers would have been implicated and their careers destroyed as well. I took the blame to limit the damage. Sophia's willingness to sacrifice her own career to protect her fellow officers was consistent with the character Thompson remembered. She had always placed the welfare of others above her own interests, even when doing so came at significant personal cost. Sophia, what happened after you left the military? I tried to transition to civilian aviation, but my military record had been damaged by the investigation. Commercial airlines were reluctant to hire pilots with questionable safety records, even if the underlying circumstances were unfair. I worked various jobs, flight instruction, charter services, cargo transport, but nothing stable or well-paying. And eventually, I made some poor financial decisions and personal choices that led to a downward spiral. Lost my pilot's license due to medical issues related to stress and alcohol. Lost my apartment when I couldn't make rent. Lost my car when I couldn't make payments. Lost contact with most of my military friends because I was ashamed of what my life had become. General Thompson listened to Sophia's story with growing sadness and anger. The woman who had saved his life and the lives of 13 other soldiers had been abandoned by the system she had served with distinction. Her sacrifice during Operation Thunder Ridge had been repaid with bureaucratic betrayal and institutional indifference. Sophia, how long have you been living on the streets? About 3 years. I've been moving from city to city trying to find work or assistance, but opportunities are limited for someone with my background and current circumstances. Why did you come here? Why now? Sophia looked directly at General Thompson with an expression that mixed hope with resignation. Because I heard that you were stationed here, and I hoped that maybe you would remember what we went through together. I hoped that maybe you would understand that I'm not just another homeless person asking for charity. Sophia, of course I remember. I remember every detail of that mission and what you did for all of us. You saved my life. Then maybe you can help me save what's left of mine. General Thompson realized that Sophia's appearance at his base wasn't a coincidence or a desperate last resort. It was a carefully calculated decision by someone who understood that her options were limited and her time was running out. Sophia, what kind of help are you looking for? I need a chance to rebuild my life. I need medical care to address the health issues that cost me my pilot's license. I need stable housing while I get back on my feet. Most importantly, I need someone who believes that I'm capable of contributing something valuable rather than just being a burden on society. General Thompson understood that Sophia wasn't asking for charity. She was asking for the opportunity to earn her way back to respectability and self-sufficiency. Her request was for a chance to prove that her current circumstances didn't define her capabilities or her worth as a person. Sophia, I want to help you, but I need to understand what's realistic given your current situation and legal status. David, I'm not asking you to break rules or compromise your position. I'm asking you to help me access programs and resources that are available to veterans who have fallen on hard times. I'm asking you to vouch for my character and my potential for recovery. General Thompson began to consider the various programs and resources that were available to assist homeless veterans. The military had developed extensive support systems for former service members who were struggling with the transition to civilian life. But accessing these resources required navigation of complex bureaucratic systems that could be overwhelming for people in crisis situations. Sophia, there are programs that can help you, but they require commitment to long-term recovery plans and willingness to work within structured support systems. I'm willing to do whatever is necessary. I just need someone to help me get started and to advocate for me when bureaucratic obstacles arise. General Thompson made a decision that would change both their lives. Sophia, I'm going to help you access every resource that's available to support your recovery, but more than that, I'm going to make sure that people understand who you are and what you've accomplished. Over the following months, General Thompson worked tirelessly to help Sophia access medical care, housing assistance, and vocational rehabilitation programs. He also used his influence to ensure that her case received priority attention from social services and veterans affairs organizations. More importantly, he began telling Sophia's story to anyone who would listen. He spoke about Operation Thunder Ridge, about the heroic rescue mission that had saved 14 lives, and about the unjust circumstances that had led to her discharge from military service. Sophia's recovery was neither quick nor easy. She struggled with health issues, bureaucratic obstacles, and the psychological challenges of rebuilding a life that had been destroyed by circumstances beyond her control. But she also demonstrated the same determination and resilience that had made her an exceptional military pilot. Within a year, Sophia had regained her medical clearance for flying, found stable housing, and begun working as a flight instructor at a civilian aviation school. Her income was modest, but it provided the foundation for financial stability and personal independence. 2 years after her appearance at the base gate, Sophia was hired as a chief pilot for a medical helicopter service, using her military experience and exceptional flying skills to save lives in civilian emergency situations. Her career had come full circle, returning her to the kind of life-saving aviation missions that had originally defined her military service. General Thompson attended Sophia's promotion ceremony at the medical helicopter service, where she received recognition as their most skilled and dedicated pilot. During his speech, he told the audience about Operation Thunder Ridge and about the pilot who had risked everything to save the lives of soldiers under fire. Ladies and gentlemen, Sophia Rodriguez didn't just save my life 15 years ago. She taught me that true heroism isn't about single moments of courage. It's about the determination to keep serving others even when the system fails to serve you. Sophia's response was characteristically modest and focused on the future rather than the past. General Thompson saved my life by believing that people deserve second chances and that past service matters when evaluating someone's potential. I hope to spend the rest of my career proving that his faith in me was justified. Today, Sophia Rodriguez serves as chief pilot for the largest medical helicopter service in the region, commanding a fleet of aircraft and pilots who provide emergency medical transport for critical cases throughout the state. Her military experience and exceptional flying skills have saved hundreds of lives in civilian medical emergencies. General Thompson remains one of her closest friends and strongest advocates, frequently speaking about the importance of supporting veterans who have fallen on hard times and ensuring that heroic service is never forgotten or abandoned. Sophia's story has become a model for veteran recovery programs, demonstrating that even the most difficult circumstances can be overcome when appropriate support is combined with individual determination and the recognition that past service provides the foundation for future contributions. Have you ever encountered someone whose current circumstances didn't reflect their true capabilities or past achievements? Sophia's story reminds us that heroism can be hidden by hardship, and that some of our most valuable citizens may be invisible until someone takes the time to look beyond appearances. The general, who barely glanced at a homeless woman, learned that some people carry their service with them long after their uniforms are gone, waiting for someone to remember that heroic actions create obligations that extend far beyond the moment when they occur. If you believe that heroic service deserves lifelong recognition and support, share this story. Because somewhere, a veteran who once saved lives is asking for help, not knowing that their moment to be remembered and honored might depend on someone recognizing that true heroes never stop being heroes, even when the world stops recognizing their worth. Sophia Rodriguez didn't just save lives during Operation Thunder Ridge. She proved that some debts can only be repaid by ensuring that heroic service is never forgotten and that those who serve others deserve to be served in return when their own lives need saving. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, you can subscribe to see more incredible stories like this one.